can. All right, here we go. So, what do we need to know very first thing within this? What do we do before I give you anything? We got the pin and the roller. What do we got to do?
Pop in action forces.
Okay, so pop in reaction forces. Sometimes, and up till now, I've given them to you. So a roller, how many reaction forces does a roller have? One. So it goes this way. I already gave that to you. Pin, how many does pin have? How many? Two. So in this case, I'm going to guess on where the reaction forces are going. This one is reaction force A in the X direction. This is reaction force A in the Y direction. Please mute the video. Reaction force C in the Y direction. Okay, now we're ready to start basically step 2. So step 2 is to do statically determinate. What is the formula for statically determinate trusses? Good. How many joints do we have in this case? 1, 2, 3, 4 joints. Members, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 members. Reaction forces, 1, 2, 3. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 does equal 8. We're good to go. So beyond that, summary box. I'm going to go ahead and identify the things that I do know and the things that I don't know, and then we'll go from there. So first thing, you got force at point D. You have reaction force at A in the Y direction. You have reaction force A in the X direction. You have reaction force C in the Y direction. Do I have to kick you guys out? Richard, take that off your screen. Yeah, O. The other things are the actual stresses and strains, the forces themselves within the stresses of the bridge. So we have force AB, we have force AD, we have force AB, I'm sorry, I'll go BD. That's the center one. We have force CD, compass disc, and then last CB. So we do know that this is already given to us 500 pounds, and it's going down, so it is in the negative Y direction. Is there anything else we know right off the bat? Is there anything else we know right off the bat? Is there anything else we know right off the bat? Okay. There is one other thing you know off the bat, but nobody's answering me, so I'm just going to sit here and wait. How do you know RCY? We don't know that, though. We still have to prove it. So what one do we know for sure is obvious just by looking at physics? Okay, so RAX in this case, without even using any math, in this case, is there anything opposing the RAX? No, so we know that the sum of all of the reaction forces is equal to 0. So the force, or the reaction force at AX is equal to 0. Now, if there's something opposing it, or in a different direction that is on the x-axis as far as the outer ideas, then we're good. Then we'd have to do some math, but we don't. So knowing that, let's focus on point A. Why do we focus on point A? Because that's the most things that we know in this case, and we can focus on solving for the moments. So the moments, we're going to look at the pin, because we're going to use that as our pivot point, because it has 2 reaction forces. It's going to stop, and that'll be our turning point. Knowing that that's our turning point, that's also going to be the starting point for our moments. So in this case, we're going to start with the distance of 4 feet and multiply by the perpendicular distance. Now in this case, which direction is 500 going? It's going down, so it's a negative 500. Then you, sorry, better? Then you add the other force and the other distance that is perpendicular. So in this case, we have RCY multiplied by the distance from the pivot point to that force. So 12 plus 4 to give us 16. And you equal all that, or sum all that to equal to 0, which is what this formula says right here. Where do I get 16? 12 plus 4. Pivot point starts here. 4 plus 12 goes to the force. Distance overall. Good, Jess? So now we have negative 2,000 plus RCY 16 equals 0. You do the simple math here. RCY equals 125. So, because it's a positive number, that tells us that our guess on the direction is correct. So going up is good to go. That also kind of gives us another hint, right? If this is going down negative 500, this is going up, we're going to try and figure this one out now because we can know that the sum of all the forces in either direction or either direction are going to equal 0. So let's focus. Obviously, RAX we already know is equal to 0 because there's nothing opposing it. That's pretty self-explanatory. RAY, or RCY, these are the y direction now. We have RCY plus RAY. And again, minus because it's going down 500. And that's equal to 0. We're adding up everything in the y direction in this case. Yes, ma'am. Ben 10?
Yes.
I don't know what Ben. I don't know what the Ben 10 is.
You have no children.
I have one child.
You have a child who's 2 young.
Okay, yeah.
Is it his watch?
Ben 10.
Is it his watch?
No, it's not his watch.
Okay.
Okay. RCY plus RAY minus the 500. All right, children, freshmen. So from there, we can solve. We know what RCY is. Guys, I'm not going to ask you again. We know what RCY is, so we can plug that in. 125 plus RAY, which is what we're looking for, minus the 500 is equal to 0. You do the simple math in this case. RAY equals a positive 375. Because it's positive, we guess the arrow direction correctly. These two are good, and we can plug those in. So now RCY is a positive 125 going in a positive y direction. RAY is going up 375, and again going in a positive y direction. And now we have our reaction forces done. We are given the angles, so we really don't have to worry. The only thing that I would focus on up here is I would create the right triangle so it doesn't confuse you of what this is going to be. So we're trying to find out CB. So this is CBX. Why am I creating these? So that I can solve for my CB, right? If I put them, and you can put your CBX and your CBY up here, but then it's going to overlap other ones, just confuses me. I don't do it that way. I'm also going to do this other side so I can solve for AB eventually. That gives me ABX and ABY. The only thing that you're going to focus on is, again, basic geometry. And that's this one too. And we're going to use that a little bit later. But that's all you need to do for this bottom step, this step 4. So, move on to step 5. And basically in step 5, all I'm going to do is I'm going to generate each one of these members, separate them by point. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm telling you, when you start doing these step 6 pieces by joint, it makes it easier for you to identify what that joint's going to look like. Okay? So in this case, you're going to have, obviously, point A. you're going to have, we know, a reaction force AY, which equals 375. We've already calculated that, just so I don't have to keep flipping back and forth to the pages. We know that RAX equals 0. We know that AB is going to be over here. And I'm going to guess and say that these are going to go out. I'm going to say D is here. I'm going to say AD is going to go in. And these, again, are just educated guesses. Guests instead of guesses. B is up here. CD is here. CB is right here. And again, I'm going to guess and say that these are going to go out. Thank you. CB was a little atrocious. CBX, CBY. And then again, just so that we have a reference, ABX, ABY. 51.3 degrees, I'm going to call delta 1. 22.6 degrees, I'm going to call delta 2. This is the same, this is the same. Okay? We are also going to have this 500, force at D is equal to 500 pounds. Reaction force at this roller. At this roller we fall RCY is equal to positive 125. We're good to go. Okay? Now, I'm going to start, and I don't really need this other page now. I'm going to start where I think that the least amount, or I should say, the easiest way to solve because of the greatest amount of knowns. So I'm going to start with, in this case, A. Okay? So I'm going to look at A specifically. I'm going to focus on just A, and I'm going to redraw exactly what I need for that. Separating these helps me visualize and not worry about other forces, because when you start getting around B and you start getting around D, these other things that you're solving for on the outside are going to help you, because then you'll know the other reaction forces, the other, stresses or strain member forces that are acting, and it'll give you more information to solve for those. Okay? If you try and solve for a point and you can't solve for it, then you know you chose the wrong point. If I started with C, for example, or D, for example, I don't have enough information to solve anything. So if you make a mistake, it's not the end of the world. You're just going to realize that eventually. So we got AB going up here. We have AD going over here. We have reaction force AX, and that equals 0. And then in this case, we're trying to solve for AB, so we have to create the components that make up AB, which is ABX and ABY. We also know that our delta 1 in this case is 51.3, and that's here. It's also right here. Okay? So now, first off, let's try and solve for everything in the x direction. So we have RAX is in the x direction. We have AD. And we have ABX. I'm going to set those equal to 0. We know RAX, that's equal to 0. We don't know AD. And we don't know ABX. So this is where I'm saying right off the bat, I don't know two of these variables, so I have to solve for one of them. So in this case, ABX, okay, we can solve for eventually. This is where I'm saying we're going to get stuck. So let's try and solve for ABX. ABX, if ABY is the opposite, because the theta's here, opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse, right? That means that we're going to have to solve for the adjacent, and we're going to be given the hypotenuse. What uses adjacent and hypotenuse? Cosine. So we're going to use cosine theta. Theta in this case is the 51.3 equals ABX divided by the theta. Whoops, we still don't know AB. So this is where I'm going to say, okay, now I don't know enough information. So I'm going to go over to ABY and start that one and see if I did select the right letter. So in the y direction, we have RAY plus ABY is equal to 0. Do we know RAY? Yes. It's 375. Plus ABY. Do we know ABY? No. Equal to 0. That gives us a negative 375 for ABY. Now, because I know ABY, I can try and solve for AB, because now I have one of the other trig functions in this case. So if ABY in this case is the opposite, and we're looking for the hypotenuse, which uses opposite over hypotenuse? Sine. Sine of theta, theta in this case is 51.3. Opposite in this case is ABY. ABY we solve for here is negative 375. Over the hypotenuse, which is what we're looking for, you will get your answer for AB. Rearrange the formula, solve for AB, you get negative 480.5. Now, if you look specifically, what did I do here? I have the arrow wrong, right? Because I drew in pen, I already fixed it here. Okay, so because this is a negative number, my arrow is wrong. So in my final drawing, I changed it, and it's correct up here. Okay, I just want to be aware. Just because I'm writing pen, it's silly to do this number, try and scribble it all out and do that kind of stuff. So I have a negative 480. Now I got AB. Now I can plug that number literally back into where I started up here and try and solve for what I need to solve for. So I have, go ahead. So if it's a negative number as your final answer for a stress or strain, see how my arrow is pointing in? If it's negative, I guessed wrong. So it should be pointing out like it is in the top here. I fixed it already up here. Okay? Go ahead. Yes. Because it's in the x direction. Okay? Any questions, Smith? Questions? Correct. Yes. So from there, now we got AB. Remember, we needed AB right here. So I'm going to plug in my negative 480.5. Rearrange the formula to solve for ABX. ABX equals negative 300.12. ABX is up here. Okay, now I can finally solve my AD. So now I have ABX. That changes to a negative 300.12 equals 0. That leaves me my AD. Separate this. Did this math up here? My AD is a positive 300.12. Because it's a positive, Micah, Smiths, because it's a positive, AD is correct. And see how my arrow didn't change? Good to go. So now I got my AB. Now I got my AD. Now I'm going to move on to C, the other outside, which is over here. So I'm going to draw C. I got C. I have CB. And again, I'm just going to guess and push them out first. I have CD. And I have a reaction force, CY. I know that that's 125. To make CB, I have to create a right triangle. So I have CBX and CBY. Yes, sir. What did I do wrong? Oh, okay. Still recording. It's okay. So from there, you have your x's. In the x direction in this case, we only have CBX plus CD. And they're all going to be equal to 0. Same thing here. If we're trying to solve for CD in this case, or CB, it doesn't really matter. We can try and solve for CBX first. CBX is going to be, sorry, I forgot the theta here. Theta should be 22.6, which makes this 22.6. So in that case, you have opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse. So we have adjacent divided by the hypotenuse, which uses cosine. Theta is 22.6 degrees. Again, adjacent over hypotenuse. We don't know hypotenuse. So I'm going to start with the y's. Go over here. I don't have the information to finish it. In the y direction, I have RCY. And I also have my CBY. And that's equal to 0. My RCY I do know, which is 125. I do not know my CBY. I can solve for that now. My CBY equals negative 125. Knowing my CBY, I can then solve for my CB. CB is opposite. CB is hypotenuse, which uses sine. Theta is 22.6 degrees. Opposite is negative 125. Opposite is CBY. Adjacent or hypotenuse is what we're looking for, which is CB. Rearrange the formula. CB equals a negative 325.27. I look at CB. It's going in. I made it wrong because the negative is here, which then turns my CB up here out. From there, I now have a CB that I can plug in up here. So now I'm going to say my CBX is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, which was cosine. I can say this is negative 325.27. Rearrange the formula. CBX equals negative 300.29 pounds. Now that I have CBX, I am going to continue this up here. CBX is negative 300.29 plus CD, which is what I'm looking for. CD becomes positive 300.29. Now, like I said before, because I did all this first, when I do my point D, I'm going to have BD. I'm going to have my going down force of FD equals 500 pounds. I'm proving to you guys that what I said at the beginning is correct. Well, we're going to find out, aren't we? So if you have in the x direction, CD, right? We already solved for CD, don't need to worry about that. AD, we already solved for that, don't need to worry about that. We can do FY. F of y in this case, what's in the direction? Negative 500 plus a positive BD equals 0. BD equals a positive 500. And that's it. We got BD, we got CB, we got CD, we got AB, we got AD. Done. What questions do we have?